100 liberal writers signed an open letter in Harper's condemning cancel culture as an attack on free thought. To which I say, better late than never. A wise man once said, every good deed could have been done sooner, so I applaud them for joining the fight, finally. Even though some of them, they didn't seem to mind cancel culture when it takes aim at people like you or me. In fact, some of them did take aim at me, and maybe you. But now, see, it's targeting them, and they could lose a book deal. Hence the letter. It's the old adage that liberals should have learned by now. You can be nice to a crocodile, but he'll still eat you, albeit last. So the open letter's cute, but why not actively defend people who are being canceled right now, who aren't part of this elite group that signed the letter? Why not help those who've lost their jobs and not just speaking engagements? Instead, they say they want to end cancel culture because its existence will help Trump. No, you should want to end it because you helped create it. It rose from the toxic mud of academia, energized by the cowardice of liberals in media, politics, and business. The cancelers can smell their fear. So if you say something that they don't like, they'll contact your workplace and hound your bosses online until you're finally fired. The First Amendment matters little if they can still ruin your career and life. Yesterday I asked, where is the silent majority? The answer, in hiding from an unstable, angry mob. These open letter warriors should fight for them, not just for themselves. The people who make a stupid mistake and lose their jobs, they don't have rich friends. I mean, we could win this thing if we fight this thing together. But do it alone, you lose. Boom. So, Kennedy, I actually love the letter. I mean, it's kind of bland. I love it, but there's part of me that is bothered by the fact that they're doing it now because they finally feel the heat that other people have felt.
I was wondering when this was going to happen. I was wondering when we were going to arrive at the point where rabid ultra-leftists would wake up and be reasonable for a second. Because cancel culture, it knows no bounds, it knows no party, and it's a very, very hungry beast. And as we have seen, appeasing it does nothing because there is no end game. If you have a list of demands that you think you're going to meet and end the outrage, that's never going to happen. They will come up with new items on that list. They will come up with new lists and new enemies. And guess what? It doesn't matter if you are one of the coastal elites. They are coming for you. So it's about damn time that someone, as a group, stood up for free speech, especially that which you disagree with most.
Yeah. Now, Juan, if they had asked you to sign this letter, would you have?
I'm not sure. I think so, but I mean, I resist sort of joining in any kind of club like that. And you saw it in terms of the response from some on the far left who said, hey, these are people with high-paying jobs who are just worried about losing their next speech, that, they're not speaking out for everyone. But, Greg, I agree for the most part because, I've been fired for speaking my mind, right? So I've lost a job because of this. I literally wrote a book called Muzzle the Assault on Honest Debate about this. But what's ironic and what troubles me, and the reason I would have hesitated, is that I think that ideological debate today is more open than it's ever been, in large part because no matter what your voice carries, there's a social media platform for you today. Those voices are going to get heard more so than ever before, and I think that's a good thing. People talk about cancel culture, but, it plays just as Kennedy says. It plays on the left. It plays on the right. President Trump just recently is trying to block a book by his niece. He's trying to block Bolton's book. He tries to see if he can pull NBC's license.
But that's...
Well, I think it is.
But that's not cancel culture. We're talking about
somebody up.
It's his niece's book. We're talking about people...
to shut people up.
Yeah. I know. We have a delay. Cancel culture targets people's careers and tries to ruin them. We're not talking about a person writing a tell-all book. We're talking about obscure people who make a mistake and their entire lives are destroyed. In this case, there's a group of people saying we've had enough. And granted, they might be immune to it, but maybe they're supposed to be the right people to do it at this time.
Yeah. Right.
No, so what I think is if you try to tell somebody you can't write this book, I don't want to hear what you have to say. If you say to a critic, oh, I think you're a murderer, like you said about Joe Scarborough, I think that's cancel culture. That's an attempt to shut somebody up, to muzzle them. So for my money,
I disagree, but we got to move on.
Let me finish my point. I think that you can't use this to excuse people who would spread lies, who would have calls to violence, conspiracy theories, racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, gay bashing. That's not what we're talking about here. Let's talk about honest debate.
All right. Jesse, you can comment on what Juan just said, that he kind of pushes cancel culture out to encapsulate a whole bunch of things. What say you? You are probably the prime target for cancellation at any time, probably by the people who wrote this open letter.
Yeah, if there was a betting pool on who was going to get canceled off the show, I'd probably be winning. But, yeah, no, I agree with your monologue. This was about self-preservation. It wasn't about principles. There was crickets when the Republicans were getting scalped left and right. I mean, these people created the mob turned on them, and now they're trying to change the rules in the middle of it to protect their own hide. It reminds me of one of your other monologues when you highlighted the guy who was cheering on the rioters until the rioters came to his neighborhood and burned his neighborhood down,
right.
And then he was on the phone with 911 saying, "Where are you?" But they do this in the middle of the game to protect their power, and they do this a lot. Like, they'll create a movement and then drop it when it's politically expedient. Like, they did it with Chaz. They did it with blackface, with masks. They've done it with the Me Too movement. Mm-hmm. They've done it with the Defund the Police movement. And it's interesting to watch because the left is always on offense when it comes to the culture war. The right is always on defense. And trust me, defense does not win championships because it's a death by 1,000 cuts. They're going to throw litigation. They're going to get you fired. They're going to have legislation. I mean, it's just a full-out assault. And all of a sudden, Trump comes along, and he picks up a sword and says, let's go on offense, guys. And he starts going after the media. He starts going after the deep state and the anti-Christmas people and the statue topplers. And what does the Republican Party do? They not only don't grab a sword, they don't even pick up a shield and defend. They just go silent, and they've just sat there this whole time and haven't even participated in the culture war, and that is no way to win this thing.
Yeah, good point. You know, Dana, I got a lot of viewers ticked off at me when I was talking about whether the silent majority existed, and I got a lot of emails from people saying, what would you have us do? If we aren't silent, we'll probably lose our jobs. I think they're referring to if they talk about supporting Trump or wearing a red hat or criticizing a movement like Black Lives Matter, that they're gone.
Yeah, and I understood your point, and I think that, of course, they are polite and they send you an email and they say, but what about us? And I think that you understand them as well, because you've said on the show before, we're super privileged to be here on the Five. We have a place where we are free to say whatever we want. We have bosses that back us up as like free speech absolutists. So we are in a much better position than a lot of people, because you do see that the consequences of speaking up are not just, well, maybe you had a bad couple of weeks. It's that you actually lose your ability to feed your family. So when I agree that with Juan that there's never been a time when you could express your feelings more openly and have a debate. But what's different now is that you have a situation where people will then call up your employer and demand that you be fired. And then it's very hard for anybody to get a job after that. Remember the Mozilla CEO? Because he had given $1,000 to Prop 8, which was the anti-gay marriage rule referendum in California. But that was at the same time that Barack Obama expressly, that was his position at the time, and everybody reached back and got him. This past week, Boeing had an executive who lost his job for an article that he wrote 30 years ago about women in combat.
Right.
And if you went back 30 years ago, and if you looked at the Gallup poll, I'm almost guaranteeing you would have found that issue about 75-25 in the country agreeing with him. So he actually lost his position. Boeing lost an executive. His family now is out there. The safest place to be when there's a mob is in the mob. I think that this letter is a welcome thing. we should want to play Red Rover with them. Like, link arms. Okay, let's do this. My last point is, there was an author, I don't know if she signed this letter, but the woman who wrote American Dirt, it was, I thought, a fantastic novel that came out in January. And they canceled her book tour. Not because her book said that illegal immigrants shouldn't come to the country. No, her book was very sympathetic and empathetic to the plight of illegal immigrants and what they go through. The problem that the cancelers had with her was that she wasn't Latina enough. She was only part Latina. So they canceled her book tour. They basically tried to run her off the road. So I think if these people that are authors and writers, if they think, wow, this has gone too far, we should take them up on it and all work together and do what you've talked about before, which is share the risk together.
I agree with myself as well, Dana. We should share the risk.